This week's podcast is sponsored by our friends at Yamaha. Want to hear your music the way the artist intended? Discover true sound with the brand new Music Cast range. You can receive up to £300 cash back when you buy 2 or more Music Cast products. Visit yamaha.com/true sound to find out more. Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast CES special for the 14th of January. And joining me on this podcast, we're not doing film quotes because there is only one person, and that's Steve with us. Steve?
Hello.
Like we say, this is the CES special. It's turned up late in your whatever you subscribe to. Apologies for that, but we thought we'd rather do the podcast today, Monday the 14th, having got off the jet yesterday, jet lagged to hell today, but while things are still fresh in the mind, we thought we'd do this podcast now. So Steve covered all the news back in the UK, and it's quite easy to do that, Steve, isn't it, really? I mean, people think, well, shouldn't you be in Vegas? But actually, you can't go to Vegas and do the press conferences and write them up and post them on the same day. It's virtually impossible to do that.
Well, you physically can't do all the press conferences, because if you're in the queue for one, that means you're missing the next one. There's no way you could. I've tried it in the past, and it's physically impossible to attend them all.
Yeah, we used to do it. We used to do it. I
remember, I think on 3 different occasions I tried to get into the Samsung press conference.
Yeah,
to get in.
No, you don't get in. You have to miss the one before to get into the Samsung one.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're standing in a queue that just doesn't go anywhere.
But like you say, they're all live streamed, so you don't have to even physically be there. You can watch the press conferences, and in fact, I probably had a better idea of what was going on that Monday than you did.
Yeah, you did, because I wasn't doing the press conferences. I use Press Day to go and visit the people on their stands, get early access, and then we're allowed to put the videos out as soon as their press conferences happen. So that's what I did this year, and that's what we've done the past few years that you've been out with me as well, Steve. We've done that. We've gone to LG and so on, and got our videos done, and then put them out as soon as they've been announced at the press conference. So that's what I did. So yeah, you had a better idea of what was going on than I did being out there, until I had time to go back and look at what had been announced
or not announced, as the case may be.
Yeah, and so this year's CES show, was it revolutionary? None of the CESs I've been to in the 13 years that I've done this have been. I don't know where people get this idea that there's going to be massive news and all the rest of it. That never happened. CES is a show about technology and about concepts. Always has been. You get to see what is coming later in the year. You sometimes get told the model numbers, but very rarely. Even going all the way back to my first CES, to see the actual product that was coming out that year, I had to go to events that were off-site. Basically, they're held in hotel suites or conference rooms in hotels. They're not held on the show floor. And that's always been the case with the CES show. I guess on the internet, people have their ideas. If you've never been to CES, you kind of build up your idea, because I certainly had before I'd been to my first CES. You build up this idea of what you think the show is going to be, what you think the show is going to be about, and so on. To do that, sometimes you can be disappointed, can't you, Steve? And certainly... I do it to myself every year. I think, this CES is going to be great, and it turns out to be like every other CES that's gone before it, where you get shown the concepts and they're cool, but you got to wait 2 or 3 years, I think.
Or never, sometimes.
Or never, sometimes, yeah. I mean, CLED from Sony.
Crystal LED, yeah.
It
did turn up eventually, but not quite in the form that we saw it.
So it was there this year. They're calling it Cledis now.
Yeah, which sounds like a venereal disease.
I know, yeah. So it was there this year. They were showing some PS4 footage on there in 8K.
But we saw CLED, Crystal LED. That was first shown as a prototype in 2012.
Yeah.
7 years ago.
Yeah. So I think it's safe to say that that's not coming as a TV, consumer TV. I think it's, at this moment in time, it's quite safe to say that, because it's never turned up in the 7 years. However, kudos to LG this year, because they showed us a concept last year. LG Display showed us the concept, because I think I better explain this quickly for people that maybe don't understand LG as a company. So LG Electronics are the consumer electronics company. So those are the ones that you go and buy your OLED TV. If you go into the shop, that is the company you're buying from. You're buying from LG Electronics. LG Display are a separate company, and it's that company that does all the R&D and who develop the screen technologies, and they then sell that technology to LG Electronics. So they're two separate companies.
And anyone else who wants to pay for it.
And I was just coming on to this. They also sell to any other company who wants to pay for that. And interestingly, when we come into Panasonic, we'll discuss a side of that, because Panasonic buy a specialist version of the OLED screen from LG Display. So that's how that company works. But kudos to them, because LG Display showed us rollable OLED last year, Steve, and it was there as a product this year.
It was, yes, 65-inch rollable screen.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it says they can save space, but the base looks pretty big.
It is big, and when you see it in person, you realise just how big. But it has its advantages. So you can buy a nice little display to put this box onto, which looks quite nice. So you have the two boxes sitting on top of each other. In terms of a designer look, if you want to have a living room with a very minimalist look, it will suit that look entirely. And the thing with the big box is, it sounds good, because you can get proper drivers in there for your speakers. It comes with Dolby Atmos. Hasn't got any upwards firing speakers, which is surprising. You would think that they might introduce that.
It's not doing Atmos bouncing off the ceiling, it's doing Atmos as in psychoacoustically.
Psychoacoustically is how it's doing it. But it has a nice sound to it. They did play some music. So I saw it on 3 occasions on the show floor, just to explain this to people. So the first occasion I saw it was in a hotel suite at the Mandalay Bay. It was positioned in front of this huge window that looked out onto McCarran Airport, and it was just a hell of a backdrop. And this TV sat there, it looked fantastic, and it was rolling up and down, and we could play about with it, and we could have a good look at it. I then saw it again on the LG display stand, and then again on the main LG stand, where they had a fantastic lineup of them, and they had a video screen behind them. And you'll see it in one of my videos where they did really fancy animations with a video screen behind the rollable TVs as they rolled up and rolled down. One point it was raining on them, and the rain was actually bouncing off them as the TVs came up out of the boxes. Really well done, the way they'd done the timing and that, so it worked. And there's a clip of that in my video. As concepts go, as the show goes, it's usually concepts, this is what we're going to do for the year, and no products actually announced until later in the year, because everybody has kind of cottoned on to the Apple idea of doing their own show and getting the press to themselves, which, if you're a company, it makes sense, doesn't it, to do it that way?
It's funny, isn't it? Because there's really 2 shows going on, isn't there? There's the show that we see, the press see, and then there's a behind the door show for the dealers who actually are seeing what's going to be released this year. But that's usually in secret, because obviously they don't get announced until later. Either I think Samsung are planning something in March, big global event. Obviously Panasonic do their European convention in February. Sony did announce their lineup, and LG did announce their lineup, so I guess those are announced. But the other 2 big players have got other things lined up for later in the year. Well, next couple of months, I guess. But the behind the scenes, and we've been to a few of these, haven't we? Where you get to see behind the scenes, and it's all these TVs lined up and everything, and they are all there. They just haven't announced them yet.
Yeah. Which again was the case with Panasonic. I went to their consumer thing. You only saw one side of the room, because the other side of the room were some products that hadn't been announced. But they do that kind of thing. And to be honest with you, I kind of prefer that to trying to struggle through a stand floor, on a show floor, Steve.
It would be really difficult, wouldn't it, if you had 6 manufacturers announcing full lineups all at the same time? Because you have to try and remember all the different TVs. Just trying to remember LG and Sony was hard enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so let's run through what was shown and what we saw. I can tell you firsthand what I've seen, and then Steve can fill in with some details, because obviously he's gone through a lot of the press releases that I've still to sit down and actually read. So the event kicked off with Samsung. It always does kick off with Samsung. First of all, a lot of their events are actually off-site, usually on a Sunday evening before the show kicks off. So in the past, press day has always traditionally been the Monday, and then the show starts on the Tuesday through to Friday. They have tried it a few different ways in the time that I've been covering the show. I don't know if you ever covered it when it went over a weekend or not, Steve. I can't remember now. But they did try it over a weekend once, and it was dead. Everybody went home on the Friday.
No one there. People working on the stands.
Which was great for us when we want to get video content and interview people and so on, because the show floor was dead. But they tried that once, and it's never come back. So it's usually Monday to Friday, Monday being the press day. They've now moved press day to the Sunday, but there was only 3 press conferences on the Sunday, and none that were of interest to AVForums. But like I say, Samsung kicked it off on the Sunday night. Normally it's off-site. This year it was on the Strip at the Aria Hotel. First time I've ever been in that hotel. Really quite nice. You can tell it's a new hotel, the way it's been designed and laid out and so on. So it was at the convention centre behind the main hotel, and it was another one of Samsung's neat sort of evenings where you can get to see the new concept screens. They don't announce model numbers. We know what the models are. Unfortunately, Steve's on an NDA at the moment. I'm not under an NDA, but I can't discuss it because I could get Steve into trouble. even though technically Steve won't say it. So we know what the model numbers are, and we've got a rough idea of what's coming, and we've got a rough idea of what the technology is. You
can say what you like, Phil. I just can't comment.
So it's kind of pointless me commenting and Steve not being able to take part in the conversation. So we'll do that when it is announced, because I don't think there's anything revolutionary there either, is there, Steve? But it'll be interesting to announce it when and talk about it when it gets announced. I've seen some of the features that are coming. Obviously, there was a closed room demonstration at CES. And it'd be fair to say that a lot of the tech that I discussed in the 8K review of the Q900R, and Steve's reviewed the Q900R as well, it'd be safe to say that a lot of that technology is coming this year onto other sets.
You'd assume that's going to trickle down into the rest of the lineup this year, and that would be a reasonable assumption to make.
Yeah.
So obviously AI is just being lobbed onto everything.
It is, and it is clever, and it's nice to see. And it's not only Samsung that are doing it this year; other manufacturers are doing AI as well. We'll come on to the whole 8K thing in a little while when we discuss the 8K screens. But let's go to what Samsung was showing in terms of concepts. So the main concept was micro LED. I think it's safe to say now, into the second year of Samsung hyping this technology, it's a little while off yet. The true micro LED is a little bit off. It's going to be another few years, I would say, in my opinion. Another few years, I think, until they're going to get that down to a viable level in terms of it being suitable for the consumer and at a reasonable price. It's not only Samsung that are developing this, it is being developed by other companies, and in fact I saw TCL's version of the same tech on their stand as a concept as well. So there are companies working on this.
LG was showing it at IFA a few months ago.
And LG was showing it at IFA. So it is being worked on. It is being developed. I think, I tried to get this across in the videos as well, manage expectations. It's exciting. It's exciting technology. If they manage to pull it off, if they manage to bring it down to consumer levels and at a price a consumer can afford, it's a game changer. Absolutely a game changer. But there's so much still to do with that technology at the moment. It's still a few years away. One of the concepts was a 21:9 ratio screen. I loved that idea, but then I got thinking, well, you have to develop the video processing for that to work, or you have to change the BDA standards and how it is put on a disc to get rid of the black bars without zooming the content. And if you zoom the content, you're then losing resolution. And then putting it on an 8K panel or a 4K panel, that makes sense, doesn't it, Steve?
Yeah.
So you have to think about how's the processing going to work? Because Philips tried this nearly 10 years ago now. They had a 21:9 TV. Great concept, but again, there was a lot of things getting in the way. The vast majority of material you were watching at that moment in time when the 21:9 TV came out. I think 16:9 TVs had only been out for a few years at that point.
It was quite advanced for it.
And it was advanced for its time. And of course you had black bars at the side instead of the tops and bottoms and so on. And you needed video processing to zoom the image out so it fit and all the rest of it. So yeah, there's still a lot of work to do on micro LED, but it really is promising tech, isn't it, Steve? And when you think of what you could do with all these little panels, and they are tiny, they're 12 inches squared.
They are. I think there's a perception amongst the general public, or at least amongst enthusiasts, that they're going to get a 75-inch or a 65-inch single panel micro LED television, and I don't think that's necessarily what's going to happen. Because, as you said, the things we've seen up to date have been composed of small modules, 12-inch modules. And I think that's where, if they can get it to work properly, and by that I mean so you can't see the joins. That's the key, obviously. You need to, from any sensible viewing distance, the joins need to be invisible. But if they can get that to work, then the idea of a particular screen size becomes irrelevant.
Yep.
You just order the screen to fit the room you've got. If you've got a big empty wall, put a big screen up there. All you have to do is buy the panels, the modules, and stick them on the wall. And then you could have 16:9 or 21:9. You can use part of the image for watching TV and a bit for social media. There's untold possibilities here, and it really could be a complete revolution in how you even think about the concept of a television.
And I'll tell you one thing that clicked with me, Steve. Lying one night thinking about this, thinking,
you do.
Yeah, how does this work? How's this going to work? And the One Connect box suddenly makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Because if you're talking about using all these different small panels and fixing them together to make a bigger screen, the fact that you're going to have all your connections, all your processing and everything in a separate box starts to make sense. And you can see why Samsung are doing it that way. Why they have
the ambient mode as well. You're talking about panels that are very low energy usage. They can have a low energy mode, and you basically, you have a big screen on the wall that's always on, and there's no need to turn it off. And it becomes part of the room, part of your life. You just have news feeds up there, or the TV, or social media streams, whatever you want can be on there. And then if you want to watch a big match, you put it on 16:9. If you want to watch a movie, it's scope ratio, you can put it 21:9. The possibilities are endless. And I think that means that we just need to start perhaps rethinking how we conceive the idea of a television, and stop thinking in terms of a 55-inch or a 65-inch or a 75-inch single panel. Yeah. Because also, if you're making lots of 12-inch panels, modules, then you can get your production costs down. Because if you're just making the one thing, it's a lot cheaper than trying to make 55 and 65 and 75. Obviously, the bigger that it goes, the more complicated it is. And that might be the best approach to getting production costs down and viable yields up. Because obviously, these things are bloody hard to make. When you consider, if you could make a single 4K micro LED panel, that's over 8 million pixels and over 24 million LEDs have got to be fitted to each, to all the pixels. And you can't have, and you don't want any dead pixels. That is incredibly difficult to do.
Yeah, and that's just a 4K, 8K.
That's one single 4K panel. Yeah. So if you can take the approach of using separate, individual modules, and then from that make up a TV to any screen size you want and shape you want and aspect ratio you want, then that could get the cost down.
Yeah.
So, I think the idea of a 70, or I know you saw a 75-inch, and I've seen it as well, but that wasn't a single panel. So I think the idea of a big single panel micro LED TV may not be the direction the manufacturers are going in.
Yeah, and you could see the joints at this moment in time. I've got to say the wall, the 219-inch wall, was impressive. Was really, really impressive. And I was allowed to get right up to that and get I could have put my nose on the screen if I wanted to. That's how close I managed to get. And I managed to get right off axis with it as well. And I've tried to get as much as possible on the videos as well, if you're going to have a look at the video. So we couldn't get up to the 75-inch, but the whole reason for that was there was a stage that the 75-inch was on, and it was on one of those things that spin the stage around. So they didn't want people standing up there, and it wasn't because they were trying to hide anything.
Health and safety.
Because it was health and safety. Because if you think about all those people trying to get on there, and then somebody falls off the stage and breaks a leg. Yeah.
In America, the most prestigious country on the planet.
Yeah. So there was nothing underhand going on there, and a few people have said, they didn't want you to get close to it. Well, if that was the case, why were they letting you get so close to the 219-inch? Because it's exactly the same technology.
I've seen that 75-inch up close, as in within a few inches. And obviously, when you get up close, you can see the joints. And that's the thing they need to work on. Getting rid of the joints, getting them so tightly fitted that you can't see the joints, at least from a reasonable viewing distance. And also making sure that you don't damage the edges of the modules as you're pushing them tightly together. Yeah. And obviously, you need to avoid things like dead pixels. Again, there were some dead pixels in the one that I saw. But that was just a prototype, a pre-prototype, a real early version. But, the potential of this technology is superb. I mean, it basically could deliver the best of all worlds, and theoretically can deliver 10,000 nits of peak brightness, absolute blacks, Rec 2020, wide viewing angles, fast response times. It's the future if they can get it to work.
And I completely understand why our listeners, our members, and enthusiasts are getting so excited about this, because we can all see the real potential. We just have to wait, unfortunately, and it is going to be a little bit longer yet before they get to any kind of point where they're going to be happy to sell this technology to other than business to business. So we'll just have to wait and see. And again, look at what happened with Crystal LED. That was another promising technology. So, Samsung, the thing with Samsung is, though, they're putting all their eggs into this basket, really. So it will work. It has to work for them. It's just going to take some time. But really interesting to see. And I've got to say, standing next to a 219-inch screen, that talk about immersive. That's an immersive experience. And watching your films on something like that. I mean, you could do away with projectors.
Proper HDR.
Proper HDR.
If I had that as an option, as opposed to a projector, I would go for the micro LED screen, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Samsung, the 75-inch micro LED TV and the 219-inch. Really, really impressive stuff. In terms of the TVs that normal people are going to be able to afford and get this year, event is in March, so wait for that one. It's going to be a global event. No doubt we'll have everything.
They did announce a couple of interesting things, didn't they? They're adding iTunes to their smart platform.
Yeah, which
was a massive surprise considering the amount of arguments Apple and Samsung have had of late.
And funnily enough, all the Samsung reps that were there were saying, we didn't know anything about it till the press conference either. So it had kind of been dropped on everybody, that one. So yeah, that was really quite interesting. That and again, it opens up a hell of a lot of possibilities there. Especially if you're talking about 8K screens and that kind of thing. That could be one way of getting 8K material. Providing somebody makes 8K material to go in there. But yeah, it's potentially one way of doing it. So yeah, really interesting that. Right, so we move on to LG then next. So they had their rollable TV, or ROLED, as everybody was calling it. It was really, really impressive. They reckon 50,000 times you can use this screen before they would expect any sort of damage from rolling it. And I said that's not enough, because if you get your mates round, you're playing about with it quite a bit, aren't you? So you soon hit the 50,000 times that you've rolled it and unrolled it. But yeah, they reckon they've solved the problem with that. They reckon it's now strong enough to last, and it's got all the features that every other OLED screen has. So the same OS system, Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, everything is on there that's on the normal TVs. It's a signature product. It's going to be damn expensive. I'll be surprised if it's under 15 grand for the 65-inch rollable. Yeah, I'd be really surprised if it's any lower than that. And the same for the 88-inch 8K screen. Fantastic quality. Also, I saw a 65-inch 8K, which wasn't announced by LG Electronics, and this is why I was trying to go through the separate companies. So this was on the LG display stand. They had a 65-inch 8K. No word whether LG Electronics will release that, but if they were going to do anything with it, I would imagine something round about IFA time, I would have thought. So we'll see how the 88 goes. Beginning of the year, we might see the 65-inch round about IFA time if LG Electronics decide that they're going to launch it. LG Display have one. It was on their stand, which was really interesting to see.
Yeah, I suppose LG Display can make a 65, 77, 88-inch, whatever. If there's demand from not just LG, but anyone for that matter, they'll do it. It's just a question of whether there's demand. I mean, you have to question whether you're going to get much benefit on a 65-inch screen in terms of 8K if you had any content to watch on it in the first place. Yeah. That's another issue entirely. But the 88-inch 8K does look bloody impressive, has to be said. Yeah,
it's really impressive. It'll be interesting to see what the price is, though. And again, I think again you're looking at around about 15 grand. I'd be surprised if it was any less than that. So yeah, really top heat. But these are the signature products, and really quite interesting. Other concepts there were the transparent OLED, which we've seen. I think
it's been around for a few years.
Been around for a few years. So they had it set up as a wardrobe this time. So like a wardrobe door, where you could have butterflies and all that kind of nonsense flying about through your clothing and so on, and when the lights were switched on, the panels were off, and when you switched the lights off, the panels came on. So there's that kind of thing there, as well as concepts. Like I say, it's been around for a few years, that one. They also had rollable there, which is already a product. So there's nothing else really on the LG display stand of anything to sort of shout about really this year, which was surprising, because I had seen some patent stuff websites here and there about a 21:9 aspect ratio screen, Steve, with speakers that moved to act as masking. But
that's a clever idea.
But that never turned up. So
no quantum dot LED knocking around.
No.
I mean, I've got to be honest. This is not meant as a criticism, because I think it's a strong lineup. But you could have guessed exactly what LG's lineup was going to be before they announced it.
Yeah.
I think I said it on the podcast last year. I said they're going to be HDMI 2.1, which means they can support HFR over HDMI. They've already. I mean, if you think about it, they haven't got a lot more to add. I mean, they've added some interesting things. They've added AirPlay 2 and HomeKit support. So Apple fans are going to like that.
Yeah. So we're now talking about products that you can go out and buy this year. So we're not talking about the premium screens. These are the normal screens. So they announced the C9 and the E9 and the W9. Yeah. No mention of the B9.
The Z9 is the 8K one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the B9.
B9 is coming. They just didn't want to
year.
talk about it. They didn't want to talk about it. But it's going to have an Alpha 7 Gen 2 processor in it. That was as much as I could glean from
They didn't
LG.
want to talk about it, but I think it's on the website.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Because I was going through some stuff at the weekend, and I was trying to find a picture of one, and it was there on the website.
Right.
So they are going to. It just wasn't being talked about, but yeah, it's going to be like last year. So B9 Alpha 7 Gen 2 processor, and then C, E, W, and Z will be the Alpha 9 Gen 2 processor. And you've got Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision, HDR10, hybrid log gamma, Technicolor. Like I said, Apple AirPlay 2, they've got HomeKit. They've also got Google Assistant that's already built in, and they're adding built-in Amazon Alexa as well. So, if I was them right now, I'd be shoving in HDR10 Plus because
I was just going to say exactly the same thing. Yeah.
I mean, presumably there's no reason why they couldn't. I'm sure this processor can do it. It's royalty-free. It's open source.
Yeah.
I would stick that on in a heartbeat because at that point, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? You're getting a TV that does literally everything I can think of.
Yeah. No, I was surprised. I was really surprised that they hadn't put HDR, like you say, because it's royalty-free. So why not? Why not put it on there? Because then you have, like you say, you have everything then. Whereas Panasonic stole that thunder a little bit by saying they had the world's first, having Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus on there. So LG kind of missed a trick there, I guess. And again, I asked Samsung. Everybody else is now talking about HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision on the same panels. What about you guys? And I was shut down pretty quickly. And when I say shut down, I was shut down in terms of this is why we're sticking with HDR10 Plus and not Dolby Vision. And it was basically royalties. It's going to be
interesting because if you look at the current lineup now, every manufacturer, with the exception of Samsung, now makes some HDR TVs that support Dolby Vision. Every single manufacturer, apart from Philips TP Vision. I don't think they do at the moment. Philips Funai.
They certainly haven't announced anything. Their announcement is 2 weeks from now. So
yeah, so it might be something there. But everyone else does. They've got players. They've got Netflix, Amazon, Vudu, iTunes. There's there's literally hundreds now of 4K discs that have Dolby Vision on it. And on the other side of the coin, you've got Amazon supporting Dolby Vision Plus and 3 4K discs so far. Yeah, I know where my money is.
Yeah, so that was LG. So again, nothing revolutionary there. It's evolution of the product. We weren't really expecting much else. It was nice to see rollable. Like I say, it was a concept last year. It was vaporware last year. It's now an actual product you can go and buy. It's going to be bloody expensive, but at least you can buy it, which is always nice to see. So it's always nice to see a manufacturer bring something like that through and then have a product that they sell. So that was LG. So let's move on.
One thing, Phil, because you talked to more people than me, obviously, because you were there. LG adding HDMI 2.1 to their lineup. I don't think any other manufacturer, they were pretty quiet, the other manufacturers, as far as HDMI 2.1.
Yeah, well, we're going to come on to that, I think, because I think this is an interesting conversation to have, and we'll tag this on to the end of the CES stuff, so we'll come back to this one. Okay. So Panasonic, it's kind of unusual that they announce a TV at CES, which is a US show, yet they don't sell product in the US. I've always found that a bit strange, how they do that, but certainly that's what they did. They launched it in a nightclub at the MGM, and they had everybody from the film industry there, in terms of film industry, in terms of a technical point of view, there to support their launch, because they were going Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus, and the whole director's intent message, which is again strong this year. So they had Curlis there, they had Joel Silver was there from ISF, THX were there because they certified the TV, there was studio execs there was most people you could think of from a technical point of view in Hollywood were there to support the launch. At least somebody from a company was there. And in terms of making videos, it was ideal because everybody was in the one location. I think I got 4 videos out of that event, which is kind of what I like, because I could speak to all these different people. So there's lots of videos up there. So yeah, there was a colorist there, Stefan Sonnenfeld. His company's called Company 3. So he's the president of the company, but he's also a color grader. And I've got to say, I could have stood and spoken to that guy all night, and he's worked on some big recent films in terms of the work that he's done. So it was really interesting to talk to him. It was interesting that he felt so confident about the Panasonic screen that he's bought 60 of them. in a business to business, so he can use them in his studio setup, and his color graders have that there. They use the Sony BVMX 300, which is the little 30-inch OLED master unit, but they also have a Panasonic sitting next to it.
So they've got a large screen as well, haven't they?
So they've got a large screen that they can actually see what it looks like on the large screen as well. It's going to be a 55 and 65 inch at launch. Like I say, it covers all the HDR formats. The Dolby Atmos side of things is really interesting. Again, another world's first there. It's surprising that nobody else had thought about doing this, because when they said it was a world's first, and I was thinking back and I'm thinking, I'm sure somebody else has done this.
The W789.
There was a separate
soundbar. It's
soundbar.
built in, isn't it? It's not built in, no.
So it wasn't built into the TV. So technically, yes, they do have a world's first, and it's built right on the back of the panel. So if you think about what the Sony looks like, where it has its actuators and so on, there is a rectangular box at the top with two oval-shaped drivers that point straight up to the ceiling, and they had it set up on there. It's like a consumer, behind closed doors consumer sort of event. So it's like you say, it's for the buyers, the people from the likes.
It's an interesting decision, isn't it? Because it seems like this TV's, they've called it the GZ 2000 professional edition 4K OLED TV, and you're thinking, well, all I'm interested in really is the panel. I don't necessarily want Dolby Atmos speakers on the back of it and this sort of stuff. So
but you're thinking of it as an AV enthusiast, Steve. Who's going
to buy it? Who's going to buy it?
But if you're selling to the general public as well, the fact that it does Dolby Atmos on board and you don't need anything else adding onto it, and it'll do it for you. And I've got to say, it sounded good. It was front heavy because you've got no rear speakers.
There's no surround at all.
There's no surround. So. But in terms of height and separation and so on, it really was impressive. It was really impressive, and I thought it was a nice feature to have in there. I am assuming, although I don't know anything, so don't read anything into this, but I am assuming that at the convention they will have a GZ model that doesn't have the speakers.
Last year, didn't they? Yeah. They had the FZ952 shown at CES, and then the 802 was announced at the convention, so I would be massively surprised if that wasn't the case.
Exactly. I'm going to stick my neck out as well, and I think we're going to see some small screen OLEDs. I don't have any information, by the way. Nobody's told me this or so on, but I think for the European market, I think we might see it. I'm hoping that we do, because we didn't hear anything about it at CES. But then CES is all about big numbers, big things.
I've got a question, Phil. Since you've seen the Z2000, does it have HDMI 2.1?
No, it doesn't have it.
Why did Panasonic decide to do that?
Because anything that they deem is necessary at the minute, they can add to HDMI 2.0B, because 2.1, all you need it for really, 2.1 is 8K at high frame rate or 4K at high frame rate. Yeah. Everything else can be delivered now with HDMI that's available now.
Yeah. For a 4K panel.
For a 4K panel, apart from high frame rate. If you want high frame rate, you need HDMI port. So, and there is no high frame rate content coming. No, true. So that was their argument. And to be honest with you, I couldn't argue with that. And people say, well, you want a future-proof TV. Well, it's a 4K TV, so what are you future-proofing for? The only thing is high frame rate, and I doubt we're going to see high frame rate in the next 2 years. So from that point of view, I kind of agreed with them. I thought, yeah, okay. Because at the end of the day, the consumer has to pay for it. So if they put HDMI 2.1 on there, you can guarantee that that's going to get added onto the cost of the TV at some point. So why add something that you don't need? And if they feel that they've already got low latency in there for gaming, via VRR, they could add that via firmware. If they
EARC, are they supporting that?
EARC is not on there either. Well, it's not on the GZ2000. Let me just be clear on that, because it's got the soundbar and the Dolby Atmos sound, so it's not on there. That doesn't mean it won't be on any of the other models. But I had no confirmation of that either. So it was kind of a vague answer. And that was the reason why I think it was a vague answer, was because this one comes.
I've got to say, I'm not entirely sure how important EARC is, because you can always send Atmos via Dolby Digital Plus, which doesn't need EARC. You can do it over ARC.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, you might think, well, Dolby Digital Plus is lossy, but I've recently watched The Haunting of Hill House in Atmos over Netflix, and that sounded bloody amazing.
Yeah.
So don't poo-poo it just because it's lossy. It can still sound very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sony have already added it. So the Sony sets that are available now in the shops.
EARC.
The AF9 has EARC. The ZF9 had EARC. So it's going to be difficult to say this, isn't it? EARC. But yeah, it's already there on the Sony sets. that are out in the shops now, and they're not HDMI 2.1.
Anyway, let's cut to the chase. What did the GZ2000 look like?
I have got to say it looked absolutely brilliant. But then again, like everything on the show floor this year, from all the manufacturers, it was all plain content that they had already pre-screened and made sure it was going to look nice, slow pans, that kind of thing, slow motion shots, good looking models, flowers, plants, all that kind of thing. So it really kind of difficult to say, to be honest. But I have no doubt it's going to look fantastic once we get them in for review and can sit and actually watch them properly as a proper TV. Not a lot said about the smart system and that kind of thing. I think we'll go into more of that in February. I don't think there's any great rush at the moment. It was more about getting the TV out there and announcing it and showing off its main features. And I had them lined up showing HDR10, HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision next to each other, which you would think would be a fantastic demo, apart from they were all showing different content.
Yeah. It needs to be the same thing, otherwise it's a bit pointless.
And it's pointless, you know what I mean? And again, I mean, and I think people need to take this on board, especially AV enthusiasts. There's not a great deal of difference between HDR10 plus static metadata and Dolby Vision as it stands, apart from some really subtle things where, on a scene-by-scene basis, the Dolby Vision version can adjust on the fly. You've
really got to go looking for it.
You've got to go looking for it.
It's not day and night. It's not day and night. You've got to go looking for it. And if that's the case, then on a good solid HDR TV that's got plenty of brightness and doesn't have to retone that much, I don't think you're going to notice anything at all. Yeah.
So it's positive. Again, there's not a lot more I can say about it until we actually get hands on with them and actually try them out. But it was interesting that they launched that TV. It's interesting that Panasonic had an event, because I thought they would ignore CES this year, because from a US angle they don't sell TVs into the US. They did sell them into Canada for a while. So if US listeners want one, I suppose you could get one via the Canadian channel. I mean, you'd have to pay taxes and stuff on it, but if you were desperate for one, you could go that route.
Or drive over the border, buy it, and then stick it in the back of your car.
We don't condemn.
Since America seems to be focused on the southern border right now, nip up over the northern border and fill your boots.
AVForums do not condone that kind of behaviour. That's down to Steve Withers, that comment. But yeah, absolutely, you could do that. So that's Panasonic. It's interesting. Again, their convention's coming up in February, and again, the whole HDMI 2.1 thing, we'll cover it at the end. But I don't see that. I think a lot of people are cutting their nose off to spite their face at the minute when you read comments like, no HDMI 2.1, I'm not going to buy this. It was a bit like, there's no Dolby Vision, I'm not going to buy this, when TVs didn't have Dolby Vision.
I was thinking, I don't know of any players that have HDMI. No. There are no players with HDMI 2.1. There's no games consolation by 2.1. There are no AVRs that support HDMI 2.1. There are no soundbars that support HDMI 2.1. So what exactly are you planning on connecting to this HDMI 2.1 TV anyway?
Yeah. I understand people that say TVs are a long-term purchase for them.
You've got it for 5 years, and there will be a games console coming in the next 2 years. It does use it. So I can understand you might want to, and obviously if that's the view people take, that clearly gives LG a competitive advantage this year.
Yeah, and of course obviously the Xbox One X at the minute can do VRR and low latency as well, so it's already there. So again, I don't quite understand what people are wanting for, other than they want a TV for 5 or 6 years, so they want to have that on board, and I get that, I understand that. I think AVForums members change their TVs a bit sooner than that in general, so maybe it's not as big an issue for them. Anyway, let's move on to Sony. I think it's the first black box event I've been to for a while from Sony. I don't know what the last one you did, Steve, probably IFA, because I missed that one. I had to do an interview.
Yeah, I did IFA,
Yeah, so it's the first one I'd sat in for a while, so I was a bit taken aback with some of the concepts they were talking about, which when it came down to 8K was about how far you need to sit back from the TV and so on. And that was presented by Ugara-san. And it was really quite interesting what he was talking about, some of the research papers that he was talking about and so on. And I've asked Sony to send them through to me so I can have a bit of a read up on that and a bit more understanding. Obviously, I'll pass that on to you as well, Steve, so you can have a read of that and see what they're talking about. They're basically talking about viewing angles and viewing distance when it comes to 8K material. And the whole point that they were pushing forward was, again, we've mentioned this already, the BVM X300 monitor that is used in the professional studios. It's a Sony product, and it's an OLED screen. It's 30 inches and it's 4K, resolution.
And about $30,000.
And about £30,000, yeah, $30,000. That was another thing, 1-for-1 on the exchange, Steve.
Yeah.
That was a killer. Especially when it came to disc shopping, which we'll cover at the end as well. I did go and do the traditional disc buying thing. Anyway, so they were talking about this monitor, and the reason they're talking about the monitor is if you think about it, 4K on a 30-inch screen, that's quite a lot of pixels in such a small space. So you're talking about quite a bit of pixel density there. And this was the point they were making, is when you come on to larger screen sizes, you don't have the same density, pixel density. So if you're trying to get that same kind of image that the professional is looking at, you don't get that. Even on a 4K screen at 65 inches, the pixel density is just not there.
No.
So this is what they were talking about, and this is why he was talking about this, because it baffled me at the start. I'm thinking, why? I'm not sure I get this. Why are you talking about viewing distances and so on? It then made perfect sense when they went on to pixel density. So when it comes to 8K, yes, there's no 8K content at the moment. It's very thin on the ground. But if you think about pixel density, and I've lived with an 8K panel from Samsung for a few weeks, and it was one of the things that I really noticed was pixel density. So even though you're using upscaled material, 4K material upscaled and so on, when it was next to a 4K TV, and I've done this here, I had the Q9 FN sitting next to the Q900 side by side, some of the 4K material looked slightly sharper on the 8K panel. So the first thing is, well, what are they doing in the processing? Are they adding in edge adaptive upscaling? Are they sharpening there? Are they using some kind of technique? And it comes down to pixel density. Because you've got more pixels squeezed into the space, it actually does make things look slightly sharper. So there's no extra detail in there. So don't jump to conclusions when I say that. You're talking about stuff that can't be added in. I know that. There's nothing extra being added in there. It just, to the eye, looks that little bit sharper because of the pixel density that's here. So this was Sony's point with their 8K panels. It looks more like the professional monitor because of the pixel density. They could do better upscaling because of that. They could make the upscaling look nicer, and I've got to say it did look really nice. Now they had some 8K material that it showed us, and then they showed us the same material in 4K and upscaled. So they had a ZF9 on the left, the ZG9, lots of G's this year in the model
lots
numbers.
of Z's and G's.
Yeah, I know. So they had those two sitting next to each other, and then they had the little 30-inch monitor on the floor next to them, in between them, so you could quickly cast your eye over. And I've got to say that the 4K upscale material didn't look as nice as the native 8K for obvious reasons, but upscaled from the 4K, it looked sharper than the 4K panel sitting next to it. There was no extra detail in there. There was nothing else going on other than the upscaling that was going on and the pixel density. So that was their point. That was the point that they were making. And Sony are well known for over-egging stuff in their demos. They'll put their hands up to it. We've mentioned it a few times. If they have a competitor's model, it's usually in the worst possible settings next to their model.
The one I went to, IFA, they had really banjacked stuff.
So you got to take that on board. And constantly when I'm in any manufacturer's demonstration, I'm really cynical about these things. And I like to stand off.
But this was them showing it against their own TV, wasn't it?
This was against their own TV.
So,
and they were trying to make a point, and the point made perfect sense, and they had a scientific paper there, which, again, I've asked for that paper so I can read it. I'll need to check whether I can publish any of that or not. It may be a case that we can't publish it, but I certainly want to read a bit more because it has piqued my interest. They've been talking about something which I think actually genuinely think, that makes sense. And when you're talking about bigger screen sizes where 8K makes sense, better pixel density and so on, they're definitely onto something there. So I want to explore that a little bit more. So it's the first demo I've been in for a while where I actually, after the demo, I'm thinking about it and thinking a bit more about it and thinking, actually, I want to find out a bit more about this. And of course, like I say, I've lived with an 8K TV for a while, and that was one of the things I really picked up on that as well. So I don't know about you, Steve. I mean, you've obviously seen 8K stuff, you've seen 8K material, you've seen upscaled and so on. What's your thoughts on 8K? I mean,
no, I totally agree with you. Logically, you think, well, this is a 4K feed going to both a 4K TV and an 8K TV. They shouldn't look any different, but the 8K TV does look better. It does look slightly sharper, slightly more detailed. And it's down to the pixel density and obviously the quality of the upscaling to a degree as well, but it was in making full use of all those additional pixels to deliver the best image. But when I was doing side-by-side comparisons with the Q900 when I was with it, and to be honest, we saw a similar effect when we were moving to 4K, and we originally there was no 4K content, so most of the benefits of 4K at the time were being promoted as being, you've got greater pixel density, you can go, take 2K content, upscale it to 4K. And back then, even, you'd look at the image and think, well, that looks slightly nicer when that 4K TV does on that 2K TV. And it's the same principle, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And obviously, you're now talking about 33 million pixels, which is an impressive number. And in a 65-inch real estate, that's a shed load of pixels to play with, and it's really good. So their TVs, let me just get the sizes right. So it's an 85 and a 98 inch. They are coming to the UK.
ZG9, yeah.
That's the ZG9. They are coming to the UK, which did surprise me. That they're going to bring them in. It'll obviously come in through the custom install channel, and not from Sony Direct. So you'll be able to get that. You'll just have to get it through the custom install channel if you're interested in that. And you're going to be paying big bucks for that, because I think the 100-inch ZD9 was touching on 20 grand, wasn't it, Steve?
Something like that. It's not going to be cheap, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's not going to be cheap.
It's a high-spec telly, isn't it? It's got the X1 Ultimate processor.
Yeah, that's all on there. I mean, everything
Atmos has been included now. They've added that now.
It's also got X Reality Creation, the backlight, all the usual stuff that Sony does. I mean, it's a fully packed out TV.
Did it look better than the
ZF?
ZF, yes.
I had that private conversation about what I'd found in my review, and obviously I was asking about the local dimming and so on. But Sony's approach, they'll never tell you how many zones are in there, what the structure is, how they do it, how they do local dimming. They are a very traditional Japanese company. If people are wondering why they don't do it, they are a very traditional Japanese company. So whereas some Japanese companies like Panasonic have modernised and now have a bit of a more modern approach to putting their hands up to feedback and saying, yes, we didn't do that particularly well and we're going to change it, Sony will never, ever, ever talk about that. Never, ever. It's just the culture. And I know it can be annoying for people who follow us and so on and say, well, why are they not talking about this? They just don't talk about it. It's not in the culture to talk about something that's maybe not quite right. However, I did have the conversation because I noticed that the dimming was better on the ZG. However, that wasn't on CinemaScope material. They didn't show any CinemaScope material. So in terms of the black bars lighting up and so on, I can't tell you anything until we can review one of these. And to be honest, at 85 inches...
unless, the only way that's going to get reviewed is if we go to a third-party site, isn't it? Because
exactly.
It's just going to be too big. It's too big.
It's too big.
Anywhere.
So it may be that we talk to whoever's handling it. It's AWE, isn't it? So whoever's handling it...
Murata Vision, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be Murata Vision, actually. But whoever handles it, we'll reach out to them and we'll try and get a review of some kind. It may not be one of our normal reviews where we live with the thing for a while, but if we can get in and test it and measure it and spend some time watching some well-known material that we know and so on, we might be able to put something together. So we'll have a look at that. But for CinemaScope, I couldn't tell you. With other material, and it was material that I know quite well. I think I've mentioned them on the podcast before. They do their videos on YouTube. They're in 8K, if you can get 8K to work on your desktop. I mean, I've got an Apple 5K iMac, and it struggles to play back on that. But you can get it if you've got the means to do it. You can get an 8K, but you can also watch it in 4K. For the life of me, I can't remember at the minute who it is. I will put the details in the podcast description. But that material's on there. It's on YouTube, and they were showing that on there as well. So I was familiar with the material. I could see that the local dimming was working better than it did on the ZF9 with interframe contrast was better. It didn't look as bad. And again, interest in the X-Wide technology being talked about, and it was present again on there on the VA panel. So it'll be interesting again to see if that affects it in any way. But on the material that I saw, I couldn't see any inter-contrast problems that I did see with the ZF9. So it looks like they have made improvements there. But like I say, Sony are a difficult company to talk to when it comes to things like that, and people should just understand that is culture. It's Japanese culture. I mean, Steve, you worked out there for years, so nobody ever admits to mistakes.
No.
So
there's no Japanese word for no.
So it's just a cultural thing. But the screen that really I think is going to be an excellent screen this year. Well, there's two. there's two really, really good screens that I think Sony are going to knock it out of the park on, certainly on what I've seen so far. The obvious one is the AG9 OLED. New acoustic surface is the only thing that's really changed from the AF9 apart from the stand. So
I was going to say, is there any major differences?
The difference between this is a much thinner panel. So the 2019 TV is a much thinner panel, the AG9, compared to the AF9. AF9 had the pedestal stand with all the connections built into it, like the A1, and it had a slight lean back. That's all gone. And I asked Gavin about that and said, was that on feedback? And he says it was a mixture of feedback and them wanting to make a thinner panel and change the acoustic surface, which was interesting. So it now sits upright. So I think if you've seen the AF8, Steve, it's the same stand as the AF8,
right.
So it sits just under the panel, so it looks like the panel's sitting on your TV stand, but it's actually a tiny little stand it sits on there.
Yeah.
And they've done away with the 3 actuators on the back, so they had the left, centre, right actuators. They've done away with that now, so it's just 2 actuators on the back, which sounds like a backward step until you actually get to see the actuators, which they had samples that I could look at. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to take any photographs at all in the black box session, which was a shame because it's one of the reasons I got Gavin to take the remote control onto the show floor so he could show it in the video, because I couldn't take any video in the black box room. But the actuators have changed from the old actuator had 2 small circular things that sat on the screen that vibrated the screen, and they've changed that to one larger oval shape, and they reckon that they get better sound quality from the oval shape, certainly in the mid-range and higher frequencies, than they do from having the 2 on each actuator. So 2 in the actuators, there's 6 in total because there was 3 actuators, whereas they've changed this to 2, so it's 2 now. And I've got to say, in the demonstration that I had, it sounded just as good. And it still sounds like it's coming from where it should come on the screen.
Has this got the processing where the sound moves with the source of the sound on the screen? Or am I thinking of a different manufacturer?
You're thinking of LG, their Crystal Sound on the LG. So they had the 5 or 6 actuators on the back, and the sound follows the.
They can move the sound around.
They can move it around the screen. Whereas no, this is just stereo. But it's still impressive. It still comes from where it should be coming from on the screen, if you know what I mean. So if somebody's talking on the screen, the voice is coming out of their mouth and not a speaker sitting underneath the TV or speakers at either side of the TV. And it just adds that extra something to the sound quality, to be honest. And there's still 2 subwoofers on the back, which handle the mid and lower frequencies.
And you can use it as a centre speaker?
You use it as a centre speaker. Now, the only thing about using it as a centre speaker is the voicing and the timbre matching and that kind of thing with the speakers that you're using. And I'm surprised that Sony haven't cottoned onto that and designed a home cinema package to go with it. You know what I mean? It makes perfect sense to me that. But unless they've got something coming this year, I don't know. There was nothing announced at CES, but you would think that they would be able to match up the voicing of the speakers and have a left and right, nicely designed floor standers or whatever, and some rear speakers to go with it. But nothing yet. But you can use it as a centre speaker. Everything's there for that to happen. And apart from that, there's not a hell of a lot of difference between the AF9 and the AG9. And the AF9 discontinued now. So the AG9 takes over from that. So that model's not continuing into this year. The other one, and I think this is going to be a big seller for Sony, is the LED LCD XG95.
Sure, you should probably just mention there's also going to be an AG8, isn't there? OLED.
Yeah, there is, but there wasn't one on the show floor for us to see.
That is coming
but that's coming as well. And obviously Sony are going to announce things, like everybody else, they'll announce things for the UK a little bit later. So
because they've announced it all, haven't they? Normally they don't announce everything at CES. Normally it's just a couple of things and they announce it all in February, but obviously they've already announced everything.
They've already announced everything, but I'm sure we'll get stuff through as soon as we know exactly what the pricing and that kind of thing is. Once that comes through, we'll put all that up. But yeah, the XG95 looks like a really impressive TV. It has a lot of the things that the ZF9 had. Interestingly, and I only got a small answer to my question, but the X-Wide technology is only on the larger screens. So it's only on the 70 and 85 inch. It's not on the 50, 55, 65, which I found quite curious as to why that's not there. And it's only on the bigger screens. And I asked, and just to clarify that was the case, and they clarified that was the case, but they didn't give me any reason as to why It only comes on the larger screens. So again, that's interesting. For me, anyway, that was interesting that it's not on there. So obviously, you're not going to have the viewing angle, the wider viewing angles, but then you're probably not going to have the problems with the intercontrast that we've already mentioned on the ZF9. A lot of the other tech moves over from the ZF9. The interesting thing again is if you like the acoustic surface thing, but you can't get away with having an OLED. They have something very, very similar on the XG95. Now, obviously, it's a bigger panel. They can't vibrate the actual panel of the TV, but what they do have is they have the higher frequencies 3/4 of the way up on the TV and pointing out from the panel. So these tweeters point out the way, and then they have 4 speakers behind the panel, obviously pointing down the way, but behind the panel. And they reckon that gives it a nice wider dispersion, and again the sensation that the sound is actually coming from the screen, from the centre of the screen. And they did a demonstration with some singer. I don't know who the singer was. He was bloody awful. Never heard of him before, but they had the what did they have sitting next to it again? It was a Q9FN. So the Q9FN sitting next to the XG, and they did the sound clips on the 2 TVs, and yeah, it made a big difference. Really, really quite interesting. I'm trying to think what the other features were. Just give me a second.
On this one, there's tons. There's IMAX Enhanced, Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, obviously, Google Assistant built in. I was going through the specs of the XG95, thinking that is a well specified. If it's priced right, that's going to fly off the shelves.
It is. It's going to be the go-to screen, I think, for a lot of people. The same way that the XF95 did well, and the 94 did well the year previous to that as well.
XF90, that was the one. That was,
the XF90, that's the one. So yeah, they've done well. Again, if they can get low latency in there for gaming, and they're normally quite good in terms of gaming lag and so on, it looks like it's going to be a superb TV, that one. I can't wait to get it. Because
it's got the X1 Ultimate processors in the ZG9 and AG9.
Yeah.
They've added Dolby Atmos to the AG and ZG as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
And also they're supporting IMAX Enhanced quite heavily across most of their range.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure we'll come back to in a minute.
We're going to come back to that if it's worth having. And interestingly enough, we'll come back to this. Remind me on that Sony's the only screen, because it's an interesting fact. We'll come back to that. But yeah, that's Sony. The XG95 looks like it's going to be a cracking TV. And they always make nice LED LCD TVs, Sony. If I had to have an LED LCD, I'd probably go with a Sony, because they make such a nice screen at that price point. If you're talking about higher end, I think Samsung do it better in the higher end. But certainly at that price level, and I think that's...
The mid-range, I think they're really strong.
Yeah. And you get that
really
Sony
strong
picture quality, you know what I mean, which is really, really quite nice. They do colour well, I think, with the LCDs. That triluminous, it's always quite nice. So yeah, so that's all the screens that I really had to see. I mean, the TCL, they had the 8 Series 8K TV. It looks really nice. It's 75 inches. It's definitely come to the UK. It's got a 1000 zone backlight. It's using mini LED, which again is interesting. I want to have a closer look at mini LED and see how that actually works. And he did a video explaining mini LED.
Yeah, mini LED, this is obviously going to confuse consumers no end. It's basically glorified local dimming, right?
It is, yeah. That's basically it. It's the way that it's formed behind the screen, so they're like in clumps, the LEDs. I'm trying to explain this in a way that it's not overly technical, but yeah, it's the way that they're positioned.
I did watch the video and I wasn't 100% sure.
It's the way they're positioned. It's the way that the local dimming works with them, and the fact is, it's got 1000 zones, and they're not hiding that from anybody. They're actually saying that that's what they've got on their TV. I mean, trying to get TV manufacturers to tell you how many zones their local dimming system has, you know, it's one of these things that you never get a straight answer. Whereas,
or if they do tell you, it's always off the records. You can't tell anyone else.
Yeah. So yeah, the fact that they're coming forward and saying what it is, it's also going to do HDR10 Plus, not straight away out of the box, but later in the year it'll get updated for that. So again, another TV that does Dolby Vision.
That's interesting, because TCL support Dolby Vision in the States, so...
Yeah, but they were also a founding member of the HDR10 Plus group. So yeah, so they've got their foot in both camps as well. So another TV that has both of them on there. So and they have quite a strong relationship with Samsung as well. So again, it kind of points to Samsung being the only one on the block not having both on there.
Yeah, I think when I spoke to TCL last CES, that they said that the reason they had Dolby Vision in the States, but they were using HDR10 Plus in Europe, was because of different chipsets that they were using in different regions. That was the only reason.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
rather than any particular allegiance to any format.
Yeah. Okay, so that wraps up everything I've seen. Now, things that I didn't see, Hisense. I did try to get an interview. Unfortunately, the guy never came back to me. And I'm out there on my own. It's really, really busy. So it was just a case of I didn't have the spare time to go and have a look either. And I had so many meetings running at the same time that and trying to get interviews and get people talking to me. Because I think that's another important thing about CES. We could stand there and ask really difficult questions of the manufacturers. They wouldn't be interested in speaking to us. And I think there's a time and a place, because I think a few people have brought it up in the comments, why didn't you go for the jugular, or why didn't you ask this, and why didn't you? CES is all about the manufacturer telling you what their story is going to be for the year. And I am a firm believer that in our video content and in our written content, we put out their story. We let them tell their story. And then later in the year, I think our job is to test that story and test how close they've gotten to that. So if they say X product is going to do this, that, and the next thing, CES is their opportunity for them to say that and why they think it's important. I think it's then our job throughout the year to then put those claims to the test. So people who maybe said comments about why didn't you ask this and why didn't you ask that, there's a time and a place for that. And Steve will agree with me here. We have channels that if we review a product and we find issues, there are channels there for us to give that feedback directly to the people that matter within the company. Because our aim at AVForums, and I'm sure Steve, even though Steve's now freelance, he'll agree that this is his ethos to the way he works as well. The whole point of what we do is to try and push for better products.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's all we're interested in, better products for the end consumer. We're the end consumer as well, so we want this stuff. So standing at the beginning of the year and saying to Sony, your ZF9 TV was rubbish because of this, is the wrong approach to take. Absolutely the wrong approach to take. I know where people are coming from in the forums, and I know where people are coming from in terms of comments and so on.
You've already reviewed the TV. Telling the guy you think it had an issue with his backlight isn't going to help, because there's nothing he can do about it. He's there to talk about the new products. He doesn't want to talk about what happened last year. Yeah.
So I want to explain this just so people know where we're coming from. We're not, giving in to manufacturers and letting them, tell us how to run things and hide from issues and all the rest of it. That's not what goes on. CES is there. This is our roadmap for the year. This is what we're going to do. We'll report that back to you guys. You guys can then talk about it on the forums. Do you believe them? Are you skeptical? Because me and Steve are the biggest cynics out there, really, at the end of the day. Some of the conversations we have in private, but it has to remain private. And this is their opportunity to tell us what's going to happen for the year. Our opportunity is then to discuss it on the forums, so all you guys can watch our content, believe them or believe them not, or be skeptical or whatever. You can have that conversation on the forums. It's never going to be censored in any way or whatever. That's what the discussion forums is there for. Our job then during the year is to get these products in. We review them properly. I don't have any brand bias. Steve doesn't have any brand biases here. We review the products. We're interested in good products. If the product's good, it'll get the badge. If it's got issues, we have channels to get that back to the manufacturer. And believe us, we do feed it all back. Whether they then take notice of it is entirely up to the manufacturer. But our push is always to try and get manufacturers to give us the best possible product at the end of the day. Yeah. Now, there are constraints in there. There's budget constraints, there's scales of production and all that kind of thing that come into it. And at the end of the day, they're businesses and they're trying to make money. We will never sidestep anything that we think is bad practice. We'll always highlight that to our readers and we'll always talk about that. I don't think any companies are out there to rip people off. I don't think that happens. I don't think companies are out there to tell lies either. I've never had a lie told to me, Steve, have you? I've never had anybody tell me something that was blatantly not true. About a product. They have maybe said that products
had a few questions dodged in their time.
Yeah, absolutely. The questions get dodged, but at the same time, I haven't had anybody tell me something that was blatantly untrue. So that just doesn't go on either. And I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is just that there's been quite a few comments raised under our videos and under our content, either on the forums or on YouTube and so on. So I think it's healthy to be transparent and just say, well, look, this is how we approach it. This is how we're going to do things. And we'll always listen to feedback. So you can guarantee that we read the comments. We take on board what you guys are saying out there. But I think we need to do things professionally. I think we need to do things in a balanced and transparent manner. And at the end of the day, I would much rather get the information, even though it's PR and whatever at the beginning of the year, because that's blatantly what it is. But I think you'd rather have that than go in and ask some inappropriate questions and the PR person standing next to the camera cutting the interview short. That doesn't serve anybody any good whatsoever, and that's why no interviewer would ever stand there and do that. It's a case of they're going to tell you the story. You can then come back when we test the products and we'll tell you if they're good or not, and if they do what the person at the beginning of the year said they're going to do or not. So I just wanted to clear that up. Have I missed anything there, Steve?
No, that's fine. That covers it. I just an answer to I think you started off by saying that you didn't get a chance to talk to Hisense, but I think what they did announce the show was largely US focused.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Roku TVs aren't released in this country. The R8 is a US model, and I think they had a couple things like the U9F. I think that might be the US version of the U9A that we've already reviewed, with 1,000 dimming zones and 2,200 nits. So otherwise, it was concept stuff. Yet more laser projector or laser TVs, as they call them. I think they had one that was using our red, green, and blue lasers that could do 98% of Ret 2020. So that's interesting. And they had I think they called it the One, a self-contained 65-inch TV that was basically an LCD television, but using the actuators similar to the AF9 and the A1, where it uses the screen as a speaker. So there's some interesting concept tech there, but I think they'll be announcing their UK lineup later this year.
I also saw a video on, it was one of the forum members pointed it in my direction, and again, I wasn't having a go at Hisense when I was talking about Hisense. It was just a case of their spokesperson didn't get back to me. It was so busy. He was probably so busy. There wasn't anything UK specific to talk about, so it was just a case of we just didn't catch up with them, and I didn't have time to go to the stand. So again, I wasn't having a go at Hisense or saying that they didn't have anything that was interesting or whatever. That wasn't the case. It was just things just didn't marry up the way they should have married up. However, there was an interesting video. I don't know if you saw it yet, Steve, with the panel, which is two panels in one, and one does the grayscale and the other one does the colour. Yeah. Really interesting. And I'd like to see that. So again, the UK office is pretty close to me. It's like a couple hours drive away from me. We will speak to Hisense. We'll see if that's coming to the UK. We'll try and find out what's coming to the UK, and we'll try and meet up with them, because they're down in Leeds and it's not too far away from me. And if that stuff is coming to the UK and there's some interesting things, then we'll see what we can do. Maybe go down and do a video or whatever. So don't worry, we're not ignoring Hisense. It's just that CES is CES, and sometimes there's conflicts there in terms of diaries and so on, and we just didn't have a chance to meet up. So that was the only reason that there's no Hisense coverage. But that is everybody that we did see. That, I think, in terms of TVs, that's everything that needs to be discussed at the minute, Steve, unless I've missed anything. Again, that was one thing I did, and again, apologies for the mistakes in the videos. There was a couple of mistakes here, and the whole reason for that is I didn't have somebody listening in to what was being said, because normally if there's a video of Steve's in front of the camera, I'm listening to what he says, and if he makes a mistake or he doesn't mention anything or whatever, then we've got time to fix it there and then. There was a couple of bits and pieces that I forgot to say things. I think I said something like the only manufacturers that had announced models were LG and Panasonic, which blatantly wasn't the case, because Sony had as well, and but I was on my own, didn't catch that one, so apologies for that in that video as well. So, but yeah, I think we covered everything there, didn't we?
Well, there's one thing left, I think.
HDMI 2.1. Let's do HDMI 2.1 first of all. So I did catch up with HDMI organisation, the HDMI Licensing Association. Spoke to Brad on the stand, very helpful guy, but obviously he couldn't really answer the questions that I wanted to ask, because he represents a trade body which licenses HDMI cables. So when we're talking about should people buy an HDMI 2.1 TV or do they need one or so on, he really couldn't give me a straight answer, which isn't his fault, because he doesn't, he's not there to give consumer advice. So it was a bit strange trying to get the questions answered that I wanted to get answered, because obviously the other thing is, do you need fancy HDMI cables? Do you need to be spending a lot of money on HDMI cables, even with 2.1 coming in, high bandwidth and that kind of thing? And again, it wasn't his fault, but we couldn't really give a straight answer on that one either, because he represents a trade body that certifies cables, and cables have to be certified and go through certain ways. So he still has a lot of interesting things to say. So if you're still unsure about HDMI 2.1, what it is, what the features are and so on, go and watch the video. It is really quite interesting. But I guess the main question I keep seeing popping up in the comments, I'm sure you're the same, Steve, you've seen loads of it, is do you need a TV with HDMI 2.1 at the minute? My answer to that is, depending on what it is that you're looking for, if you're a gamer, it's going to be worthwhile looking for VRR, and low latency. That's going to be interesting. You don't need HDMI 2.1 for that. That can be added by manufacturers without HDMI 2.1.
Samsung were had VRR last year.
Yeah, exactly. So it's on their products. It's on the Xbox One X at the minute as well. So you can get that. So that exists at the minute. The only other thing that you really need HDMI 2.1 for is 4K and 8K at high frame rate. 8K altogether. So any form of 8K
high frame rate
and high frame rate, and then it's 4K and high frame rate. That is the only reason you need HDMI 2.1 at this moment in time, because everything else can be added by the manufacturers to existing specs. So like I say, the Sony TVs at the minute, they have EARC, so you can go and buy a TV now with that on board. The AF9 certainly has it, the ZF9 certainly has it. I've tested those TVs. HDMI 3 has that on board, and it also has HDCP 2.3. So that is available. So when it comes to buying a TV, and this is the main question, do you need HDMI 2.1? Well, you need to figure out whether you want to have high frame rate video, either at 4K or an 8K. If you want an 8K TV, I would say yes. If you buy any 8K TV, you want it to have HDMI 2.1.
You want to have at least one HDMI 2.1 input.
The Sony is going to have that. It's going to be an upgrade, but it will have it. And
same with the Samsung.
And the same with the Samsung. So they're definitely going to have them. As soon as those TVs are available, they'll have them. The Samsung's out at the moment, but they have said on numerous occasions that they will replace the One Connect box free of charge. You have to ask them.
You have to ask them, but they will do it.
You have to ask them, but they will do it. And I think that's a great approach from both Sony and Samsung.
And obviously, in the case of LG's 88-inch for 8K OLED, that's got HDMI 2.1 because all their TVs have.
Because all the TVs have. So that is the long and short of it when it comes to HDMI 2.1. And a lot of these features you can have without 2.1. It's just up to the manufacturers to add that. Now, a lot of them in terms of low latency when it comes to gaming, I don't know any TVs other than the Philips that has a poor input lag over the last year. Everything's been under sort of 25.
They're down to 20 milliseconds now, aren't they, roughly? Even below, some of them, below 20 milliseconds, which is, that's as low as you're going to get really. After that, you're talking about how long it takes for a signal to get from your brain to your hand.
Yeah. The only other thing I can think of is if you're a PC gamer. I don't know enough about, I'm going to put my hands up here, I don't know enough about PC gaming to really understand it, but I do know that PC gaming is higher frame rate, and you're talking like 100 frames and above. So yes, it would be worthwhile if you want to PC game, look for a TV with HDMI 2.1. Because then you've got a
PC that's got an HDMI 2.1 output on it to start with, isn't it?
So I think the Nvidias do that, or certainly will do that. So I think that is tech that's coming. Again, I'm not 100%. I don't PC game. I don't really know that much about it. But certainly, if that's what you're looking at, then I would do more research and look at that. But then you need different features from your TVs anyway, because I understand that somebody put comments on my Q900 review about 4:4 video and all the rest of it, because he was trying to use a PC and it didn't do the features he was looking for. If that's the type of thing you're in a niche market there, you're going to have to do a bit more research about the products. But certainly it can't hurt to have 2.1 if you're a PC gamer and you're looking for high frame rate. Everything else, as I understand it, can be added in, and it's just up to manufacturers to choose the features that they want to offer, and manufacturers will choose different options depending on where they see their market, where they see the consumers and so on. So I don't think I've missed anything there, Steve. Anything else you want to add to that? No.
No, not to HDMI 2.1. 8K Association got announced.
Right. Yeah. Tell us about that, then, Steve, because I haven't read that yet.
Well, it sort of slipped out later in the week. But basically, Samsung, Panasonic, Hisense and TCL at the moment, and I believe they haven't signed on yet, but they were talking to LG and Sony as well. But those are the four sort of founding members of the 8K Association. So the idea is they've got together to create an association whose role is to educate the public and the industries as well, to sort of promote the creation of 8K content and also the development of an 8K ecosystem for 8K production distribution. So basically, it's kind of like the 8K version of the Ultra HD Alliance. It's there to promote 8K to anyone who wants to find out about it. And that's basically it, really. It's just it's an association of industry, industry bodies and manufacturers who want to promote 8K as a new format.
So kind of like the Premium HD Alliance type thing.
Yeah, the Ultra HD Alliance, Ultra HD Alliance. So who did the premium Ultra HD Premium certification program. I think they're doing something similar to that. I mean, so they're trying to create a set of standards for 8K. Now, obviously, there are some standards for 8K because 8K is covered along with 4K under Ultra HD. Ultra high definition includes both 8K and 4K, and then there's things like HDR and other things on top of that, high frame rate, etc. But yeah, they're looking to sort of promote a base level of performance for 8K TVs, what they need to do, what they need to be capable of doing to be classified as such. So yeah, it's very similar to the Ultra HD Alliance in terms of promoting. This time, instead of promoting 4K, now they're promoting 8K.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So finally, what we need to talk about, Steve, is IMAX Enhanced. IMAX Enhanced. I keep saying IMAX Enhanced. I don't know why. I just do. Right. So the easiest way to explain this is that obviously there's a few manufacturers got together, IMAX being one of them. They've been looking at the home entertainment space for a while, as it was explained to me, and DTS are obviously looking for some form of relevancy in the 4K platform world, because they have kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. They were the sound format of choice on Blu-ray, but for 4K Blu-ray, it's definitely gone the way of Dolby recently. So they are losing out a little bit. So understandably, you can see that they're trying to get some of their market share back. One of the ways of doing that is by forming this partnership with IMAX. And there's some interesting things in here, and there's also marketing. And I think it's clear to most people looking in that there is a degree of marketing involved with IMAX Enhanced. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It just means that there is a bit of marketing going on, and obviously DTS are desperate to get their technology in front of people, and IMAX want to make a move into the home entertainment world, where I think this has value. From what I've seen, demonstrations I've had, the conversations I've had with those people responsible and the representatives of the companies, is that certainly when it comes to discs, in terms of 4K Ultra HD discs, there is a lot of work that goes on in post-production. And some of that is under the guidance of IMAX. IMAX know what they're doing when it comes to post-production, making films and so on. And some of the technologies are quite useful there. And some of the things that they're doing are quite useful. I was a little bit scared when they were talking about noise reduction and grain reduction, grain filter removal and so on. However, they have said that they do not do anything without the filmmaker's consent. And with the filmmakers' being involved with it and seeing what the material's like and so on. So if the filmmakers involved with it, then I don't think we can make any negative about that, because it's their creator's intent at the end of the day, Steve. So if they want to remove grain from their films that they've made, that is their entitlement to do that. And I don't think from a video purist's point of view we can say anything to that, because it's at the end of the day we're going by creator's intent. If that's their intention, then that's their intention. Now, they're not going into old films and just removing grain or removing noise. They have a technology, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, DSM or something like that,
yes,
technology that they use.
There might be an X in it.
Yeah, they use it anyway in the post-production world. And basically what you're looking at is when films are made, certainly older films were made, they knew the limitations of the technologies that people were going to view the films on. So even though 35mm can capture roughly around about 4 to 5K in terms of resolution, and 60mm and 70mm are closer to 8 to 12K, and obviously the IMAX frames, I think he was saying it could be anything up to 16K if you were looking at resolution and trying to compare them. So even though you have that and so on, when filmmakers were making films back in the day, and even back in the 90s, they knew what their distribution platforms were. So they knew that they were going to get certain grain, and the grain would be seen at a certain intensity when it was played back, either through a film projector or on a home video format at the time, which was obviously VHS, Laserdisc or DVD. In the world of 4K, and what we can do now with resolution and so on, is the one of the issues that has been raised when it comes to transferring films again and digitally scanning them from the negatives and so on, is the amount of grain, and the way that grain is shown when it comes to 4K and especially HDR grading. It can really bring it to the fore, and it does then become noise. It's no longer artistic, it becomes noise that's in the frame. And filmmakers are finding this when they're going back and working on older films that they've made, James Cameron being one of them, realising that this is now an issue, and obviously IMAX have come up with this technology which helps them then manage the grain. So it doesn't get rid of the grain, it just manages it for HDR and 4K and so on. So once that was explained to me, I thought, yeah, this actually has some real value. It's going to make the experience better at home. It's going to make the experience more in line with what the creator was intending, because when, like I said, James Cameron, when he made The Abyss, he knew that the highest resolution format it was going to be seen on was 35mm film in a film projector, probably 6 or 7 generations old. So you know that the grain wasn't going to be an issue, basically. But now it is an issue, because 4K resolution, 8K res scans and so on, HDR grades, it's bringing it to the point now where it is distracting and it's not what the filmmaker intended it to look like, and they're going back and they're removing this and improving it. So from that point of view, I don't know about you, Steve, because you're a bigger film nut than I am, but certainly from my point of view as a film purist, that makes sense to me, and I don't have an issue with that.
No, I don't. Like you say, as long as the artists involved, the content creators are involved in the process and it's something that they want to do because there's noise there that was never intended to be part of the image, then that's fine. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, so that makes perfect sense to me. So when you see IMAX Enhanced on a 4K Blu-ray and so on, and I picked a couple up when I was out there. So I did the traditional, I did the traditional fries and then realised that fries is about $5 more expensive than everywhere else.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Best Buy, so I picked up the 2 IMAX Enhanced titles that are out at the moment. I also, just to make you jealous, got 2001 Collector's Edition for $19.99. Which was the bargain of the century in Best Buy. I think it could have been mispriced actually, but there's 2 box sets sitting there. I grabbed one. Gotta have this. So anyway, IMAX Enhanced, that's where it makes sense. And if they're doing that in post-production, it has the filmmaker's approval, the filmmaker's sitting in when it's getting graded and so on, and they're using the IMAX technology to help improve the image. I'm all for that. I think that's great, and that's what's on the disc. The other thing is that it will come with a DTS:X soundtrack. So this is where DTS partnership comes in. So if it's an IMAX Enhanced disc, it will have a DTS:X soundtrack. The only bit I thought was a little bit marketing-wise was the fact that it has this flag and it can unlock your AVR if your AVR is
I've
IMAX
actually
Enhanced.
Got the AVR 850 that I've got has it's been updated for IMAX Enhanced, so I did it over Christmas, and I've got the 2 discs that you were talking about, the 2 IMAX Enhanced discs, Beautiful Planet I think it is, and the other one South Seas Journey. So picture-wise, the first thing to know is that, and I think this will apply to these are obviously IMAX films, but they are talking about releasing proper movies that have been gone through the IMAX process for IMAX cinema release. So the aspect ratio will be 1.9 to 1. So something like Avengers Infinity War was shot on IMAX cameras, and was I guess was originally framed at 1.85, 1.9 to 1, and that's the effects were finished at that aspect ratio as well for the IMAX release, but on the disc it's scope ratio. So if they did an IMAX enhanced version of that film, for example, it would be 1.9 to 1. There would be the DMR process, as you've just mentioned, being applied to it, and very high. The megabits per second is really, really high on these discs, so they really max out in terms of the bit rate, which is great. And they also include HDR10 plus. That is probably the only thing. So really, these discs, in terms of picture, aren't doing anything that any other 4K disc couldn't do, other than the DMR bit. But they're basically 4K discs in that sense. They look great, look stunning. They're shot on IMAX cameras or IMAX 4K. They look amazing. The soundtrack side of it, there's a DTS:X soundtrack, so you could listen to it in DTS:X on a normal DTS kit. But if you've got IMAX Enhanced receiver of some sort, then it will find the flag and it will apply. This is meant to be the sound mix that was created for the IMAX release at the cinema, and basically, as far as I can work out, it just shed loads more bass in it than there was in the normal version.
Well, you've also got the
there's also an extra channel, isn't there?
Extra channel, which is which in Aura 3D they call the God channel, and it appears on the DTS:X version, so it's like the center ceiling channel.
And I've noticed that with some of I was watching the Beautiful Planet, so they got a narrator, which is Jennifer Lawrence, and her voice is kind of across the front of the sound stage, but then they had interviews with astronauts. The astronauts were talking, their voice would be sort of hanging sort of above the screen in the middle, so I think that's what they've been doing with that bit there. So it is slightly different. Do you need it? I mean, is it going to be any better than just having a good DTS:X soundtrack in the first place? I don't think so, personally. I think it's a bit marketing gimmicky.
This is where I thought the marketing coming, because it seemingly unlocks this whatever. IMAX theatrical version and so on. So, but you only get that if you have a IMAX Enhanced AVR. The other thing was, you mentioned there HDR10 Plus. Most of the things will be in HDR10 Plus. And this is what I said to you before to remind me to come back to the Sony. So Sony are the only IMAX Enhanced TV at the moment. And what's the one thing that they can't do?
HDR10 Plus. They've got no TVs that support it and no players that support it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is where it starts to become a bit of a... Or it's certainly, if you're looking at it cynically...
I'm not exactly sure what do they mean then. What is it? Did you ask Sony what an IMAX Enhanced TV, how that differs from a normal TV?
They didn't have anything more than what was on the sheets. That was made perfectly clear to us. So when that slide came up that said everything that was on it, there was a few questions asked, and it was a case of everything that's on the slide is all the information that they had at that moment in time. So they weren't able to say anything. Which is why I did think it was a bit like, this is, if you're going to have a cynical view of it, that certainly doesn't help your cynicism when you see things like that. Now, I don't know if it's a case of that all IMAX Enhanced material would only be HDR10 Plus, but it's certainly not going to be Dolby Vision, because Dolby Vision is a locked ecosystem.
Yeah.
So it's never going to be a Dolby Vision available on the disc. It's always going to be an HDR10 Plus disc if they're going to have dynamic metadata, which then points to the fact that, well, Sony don't do HDR10 Plus dynamic metadata in their players or in their TVs, so the only manufacturer at the minute that supports IMAX Enhanced on a display can't do it, can't do the dynamic metadata. No. So that is an issue for IMAX Enhanced right there. So there are some promising things in there that I do like. I like the post-production stuff. I understand it. If it's going to make better discs, better quality transfers or scans from film and so on, certainly cleaning up a lot of the older documentaries that were done in IMAX and so on, I understand that. I like that. I think that's okay. If you're looking at stuff that is the bigger aspect ratio, I'm not sure I particularly like that, because I like a scope ratio. So I'm not a big fan personally of that, but if that's part of the system and that's the way it's done, and some of the stuff that certainly the Mission Impossible movies that have been done in IMAX and so on, it can look absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. So if your display is a TV display, 16:9 TV display and a large screen, you're going to benefit from that. Absolutely going to benefit from that. If you're a projector fan, all you need to do is set your masking and watch it 240, because it's composed 240 anyways, because that's how it's shown in the cinema. So as long as they don't change the composition when they move it to the home format, you should be okay. And certainly when I watch Christopher Nolan stuff, I tend to do that anyway.
Yeah, I've always watched Nolan stuff in 2.35:1. And as far as I can tell, I mean, you've got to think logically, he can only be composing for one aspect ratio. You can't compose for two. You have to make a decision stylistically for the beginning. And
there's not that many IMAX screens, so to have your film shown theatrically, it has to be either done 185 or 240:1. If you're going to show it,
but the exception might be something like Avengers, which was shot entirely on IMAX cameras and therefore presumably was composed for 1.9:1.
And this is where, but you see, I saw it 240:1.
But then it's projected at 2.4:1, so they must have had to think about that at the same time.
Exactly, which was my point. Yeah. So yeah, there is that side of things, but from post-production side of things, IMAX Enhanced, I can see that working. I can see why that is of value. It's a bit like the old THX certified system where they used to check how the transfer was done and so on. I'm all for that. I'm all for standards bodies, making sure you're getting the best possible content on the disc and it's mastered in the best way possible. All for that. Where I think it starts to fall down is when you get manufacturers involved, where you're having them sign up for certification programs and all the rest of it. And the perfect case here being the Sony as a display IMAX Enhanced, and it doesn't do HDR10 Plus. That's where it falls down for me. That's where the cynicism comes in. That's where you start thinking it's a bit of marketing. And the DTSX side of things, I think the same post-production wise. I've not got a problem with it. I think it's very, very similar to Dolby Atmos. I certainly can't tell the difference between the two formats. Steve, can you?
No, not at all. No. I mean, I have no. I just want the disc to be released as the content creator intended it. If they mixed it in Atmos for the cinema, then use that. If they didn't do a immersive audio mix at the beginning, then you could do either, couldn't you? Who cares?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was IMAX Enhanced. I felt I learnt something from that experience, having gone in and spoken to the people. Thank you to everybody that spoke to me out there in CES. If you're listening to the podcast, if you gave us your time for interviews, if you introduced new technologies to us and so on, then thank you very much. We couldn't have done what we did without your help and support. If you have watched our videos, if you're a member of the forums, a regular listener and so on, and you've given us your feedback. I do read all the comments on the videos and stuff. Thank you very much for all the feedback. It is appreciated. It makes the hard work worthwhile, to knowing that at least somebody's watching what we're doing and appreciating it, and giving us the feedback. Always give us the feedback. We really enjoy that. And that's it for the podcast this week. We're back to normal next week with Ed, and hopefully Mark as well will be joining us, and we'll back to our old cynical old people style of podcast. But I'm going to say sorry for being so on message, but I think a CES one has to be on message. That's everything that we saw. There was lots of other things that were happening at CES, lots of things that we didn't have time to cover, didn't have time to actually go and see. It is a massive show, and I think it's been a successful show again this year. It is what it is. Basically, it's never going to be one of these revolutionary events. Only once in a decade do you actually get something that's absolutely groundbreaking. All the rest of the time, it's evolutionary stuff, but we're all heading in the right direction, I think, and there's some really interesting tech going to come to market this year, and I'm excited again for reviewing this year. There's some products I really can't wait to get my hands on this year and have a bit closer look. I haven't had my interest piqued. What about you, Steve?
Definitely. No, there's definitely some very cool stuff coming, and I think, or I know, there's even cooler stuff coming that hasn't been announced yet, but yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be a good year. Yeah.
And did you miss it?
I didn't really. No. I'll be honest, no.
But that's just because you're an old man, isn't it? It's a hard work. It's a hard shift, though, isn't it? Really. Yeah, people only see the 10 minutes on video. There's a lot of work goes into just getting there, getting to the venue, and a lot of things are now off-site as well. So if there's one thing I did this week was travel a lot, and thank God I had a hire car to get backwards and forwards, because everybody had chosen different hotels. They had suites here and there. I only spent 2 days on the show floor at the actual Las Vegas Convention Center. That tells you how big that show is and where everybody are in terms of their rooms and how they're showing things off and so on. To only spend 2 days at the convention center, and even then only seeing a bit. I knew where I was going. I know where everybody has their stands now. So yeah, it's a big show. It's a different show, and I can understand why you don't miss it, Steve. Right, so that's it for, like I say, the podcast back to normal next week. Thanks very much for listening. My thanks to Steve.
You're very welcome. Bye, everybody.
And don't forget to subscribe and do all the other things that I don't have my sheet in front of me, so I can't read it off like I normally do every week, but we'll see you again.
But I think by now you know it off by heart.
I know. You can do. I can't even think at this moment in time. I think a lot of that is the jet lag as well. It hasn't quite kicked in, the jet lag, yet. I only got back last night, so I'm expecting this week to be different. Let's just put it that way. And if you can tell, I've started to get a cold now, but thankfully the cold's coming on after the show and not during it, which is normally the case for us. Normally one of us ill. So yeah, that's it for the podcast. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.